My beautiful friends, here I am to do the shadow reading. It's okay. So I've been mentioning that I'm going to do a shadow reading for the collective. So that's what we're here to do today. A few of you mentioned that I sound tired in my readings. I am tired. Like, I look very tired today. My eyes are all red. So I am going to take the rest of the day to just recharge my battery because those personal readings take a lot out of my battery. But first I wanted to do this shadow reading. Some of you have asked how to book a personal reading. I did announce my email in a reading a little while ago. Unfortunately, I can't do personal readings for everyone as much as I'd like to. I think I have 4,000 emails or something. But I'm getting through them. So, shadow reading. So one thing I was hearing before I started this reading, it's very hard for us to look at our shadows because we've been programmed to be ashamed of them and to ignore them and deny them and defend them. And it takes a lot of strength to look at our shadows, but it's very empowering to look at our shadows. Our shadow is where our light lives. So when we heal our shadows, we fill up with more light. But it's not just our shadows that we're dealing with. And I was thinking about this before I started this reading. This is going to be love related. So I'm going to look at what shadows are being triggered within your connection or the person that you had a connection with. But it's not just about our shadows because other people will project their shadows onto us. And sometimes when we're dealing with someone else's shadows, we actually internalize it as something wrong with us. So for example, if you are dealing with someone who has an abandonment wound, I've mentioned a few times this abandonment wound and how we act in different ways. Like, one person can become anxiously attached because of abandonment wounds. Some people can stay in connections that are no longer serving them or accepting less than they deserve because of abandonment wounds, struggle to put up boundaries. Other people with an abandonment wound can push us away, keep us at an arm's length, end our connection quite suddenly because of abandonment wounds. And like I said, it's not just about our shadows, it's about the shadows being projected onto us. So if somebody pushes you away and ends things with you, or chooses a safer connection over a connection with you because you trigger their shadows, we internalize that as something wrong with us. Like, why did they push me away? Why did they abandon me? So I think it's good to, even if you're not resonating with the shadows that I'm talking about today, it's good to know about these shadows so that when we see those shadows in others, we know not to internalize it as something wrong with us. So, again, it takes a lot of strength to look at our shadows. So everybody always asks me about this book. It's called Sacred Shadows by the Reckoning Co. And originally I had bought, I had bought the deck, and it's called Sacred Woundings, and I found it on Etsy. And then I saw she had a book, like a novel, so I got that. Right now I believe the deck isn't available, but the book is available, and it's a very good book. And every time I bring it out, people are like, what is that? What is that book? So Sacred Shadows by the Reckoning Co., and you can find it on Amazon. I'm not sure how many people saw the reading where I opened right up to it, where I read this poem that's in this book, but I'm going to start this reading by reading this poem, and then I'm going to get a few animal cards to see what shadows are being triggered within this connection, and then I'm going to get some tarot to explore those shadows a little more. And then I'm going to get the scary deck, the Sacred Wounding deck. It's okay. Also, I said this in a reading yesterday, don't be afraid I don't think we should be afraid to look at our shadows. It's very empowering. And there's nothing wrong when I'm reading this book if you resonate with some of these shadows, there's nothing wrong with admitting that you resonate with them. There's nothing wrong with admitting that, oh, that sounds like something I do, even if you've hurt people because of it, right? Because not only do we take on the shadows of others, but we also, our shadows can affect how we treat others. And there's no shame when you hear this in saying, whoa, that I struggle with that shadow, or I've actually hurt some people with that shadow. It empowers you, it frees you. So my kids are already being loud, but I don't care. The poem, I'm going to read you the poem. All right, so the medicine of shadows. In the depths where wounds whisper their wisdom, where shadows hold sacred secrets untold, there lies a truth beneath the breaking, a medicine more precious than gold. Hang on. Sorry about that. I could hear some inappropriate things being yelled. So I just told my children, can you not yell those things when I'm recording, please? Each scar maps a journey of becoming. Each pain points to a wisdom unnamed. In darkness we find our deepest knowing. Through breaking we are finally reclaimed. These wounds are not mere misfortune. These shadows not meant for shame. They are portals to profound understanding, initiations that whisper your name. For in the cave of forgotten memories, in the depth where fear holds sway, there dwells a light of transformation where night gives birth to day. So enter these sacred shadows gently, walk softly through this grace, for here in the heart of your healing you'll find your rightful place. Let every wound be your teacher, let every shadow guide your way, for in this sacred dance of healing your medicine is birthed today. Remember you chose these initiations, these precise paths to break and mend. For in the alchemy of sacred wounding, shadow and light finally blend. Welcome, dear one, to this journey, through darkness back to light. Your wounds are holy doorways, your shadow holds your might. In honoring our wounds, we discover our wisdom. In embracing our shadows, we embody our light. All right, so we're going to start with the animal deck, and I'm looking at what wounds and shadows have been triggered within the person you're energetically connected to. Oh my goodness. So right away we have the Cobra. I don't want to take every card that I see, but the Cobra is about when the lesson is ready to be learned, the teacher appears. So right away it feels like, oh, now I have to talk about it. All right. Well, we're just going to start with that one. Next time I won't make eye contact with the cards. But the Cobra, again, it's about when the lesson is ready to be learned, the teacher appears. So I do feel like that is a good indication that you and this person were meant to teach each other important lessons that you were finally ready to heal from, like trigger wounds that you were finally ready to heal from. Now, the Stingray is one of my favorite cards, just like every other card in this deck. They're all my favorite. But this is about building a spine, building confidence, and having the strength to put up boundaries. This is also about personal growth. So that right away tells me that this connection was meant to trigger you into personal growth, maybe even spiritual growth, and to work on all your chakras. But this Stingray talks about how it hovers until you go through that personal growth. So I feel like both of you have kind of had this Stingray hovering over you. Now, again, this one is about lacking boundaries. So that's what I was talking about with abandonment wounds. So some of us who have a fear of rejection or a fear of abandonment, we really struggle to put up healthy boundaries. And especially like empaths, you know that person and the snake card? It's called Girl and Snake. But the empath narcissist paradigm. So a lot of empaths struggle to put up boundaries with unhealthy people. So we struggle to put up healthy boundaries with unhealthy people or when we're being mistreated, because empaths have a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy. And, at some point, empaths, they hit a breaking point where they become an empowered empath, usually with someone pushing them to their breaking point. But this card is about learning how to set healthy boundaries, having the confidence to do so. And it can be very difficult to set boundaries, especially when a lot of the times when you set healthy boundaries with someone, they can push back on them. And it can be incredibly confusing. And I might get a little personal in this reading by telling you some of the stuff that I went through. So as a child, I didn't know what a boundary was. I didn't know what a boundary was until I started therapy when I was, I don't know how old I was, 34, 35. And that's when I learned what a boundary was. And I struggled to put up boundaries. And I went through some very challenging connections in my life. And the past couple years, I've been working towards putting up healthy boundaries. One thing I want to talk about, I feel I'm full of anxiety, so I don't know if you struggle to put up boundaries. But the first time you do it, it can be incredibly difficult. And usually what happens, like I said, is how can I put this? Like I said, I'm going to talk about some personal stuff in this reading, but with my partner, right? Very caring, very patient person, a gentle soul. And now that I know how to put up boundaries, I have no problem putting up boundaries. And the right people, healthy people, will respect those boundaries. They won't take it as an attack against them. So with my partner, I can easily say, this is my boundary, I'm not comfortable with this, or whatever. But on my journey, I've come across a few people who look at me. This is one of the things that I'm phoenixing out of. But, just an example, I tried to put up healthy boundaries with someone, and instead of honoring those boundaries, they pushed back against them, and they questioned them. And then, even though I had professional help putting up these boundaries, look at me, I'm phoenixing. This person made me believe that I didn't know what a boundary was and I wasn't doing it the right way, and really pushed back against my boundaries. And that was, I didn't have the confidence to stay firm in my boundaries. I let them push against my boundaries. I let them get into my head that I wasn't setting boundaries correctly, that I didn't know what a boundary was, and really made me question myself. And then that made it harder for me moving forward. It scared me, right? It scared me. Look at what happened when I tried to put up a boundary with someone. In the end, I just had to completely pull my energy away from that person. And I know, looking back, my boundaries were valid and I was expressing them in the right way, and they were being pushed back against. And again, so if you've had difficulty putting up boundaries and then you run into a situation like that, it makes it harder the next time you try and put up boundaries. Look at me, Phoenix. This is Phoenix energy. So what happened to me was I kept getting burned. I kept trying to put up boundaries and I kept getting burned until eventually I had to enforce those boundaries myself, because that's another thing. We can enforce boundaries, we can set a boundary, but then we have to stick to it. And that's another thing I struggled with, is I would put up a boundary and say, I'm no longer willing to engage in this if XYZ, and then XYZ would happen and I'd continue to engage. So I wasn't honoring my own boundaries. So it's also about you honoring the boundaries you're setting and sticking to them. It's there has to be consequences, right? So I just wanted to mention that. You know what I'm like? I teach through my own experience. So I just want to see if there's a boundary wound in here. Maybe lack of boundaries. Lack of boundaries. Shall I read it? Shall I read it right now? I'm going to read it right now. I'm feeling called to read it because I see in some of the personal readings that I do that I'm not the only one that struggles with putting up boundaries, especially when you love someone. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. Tony Gaskins. The lack of boundaries wound convinces you that love and acceptance must be earned through self-sacrifice. It teaches you to say yes when you want to say no, to absorb others' emotions as your own, and to prioritize keeping the peace over protecting your own well-being. This wound often stems from past experiences when your needs were dismissed, your limits were ignored, or where saying no led to rejection or punishment. Exactly. Over time, you may have learned that your worth is tied to how much you give, how much you tolerate, or how little space you take up. But a life without boundaries is not love. It is self-abandonment. Healing this wound requires reclaiming your right to protect your energy, your time, and your emotional space. Boundaries are not selfish. They are acts of self-respect, the invisible lines that tell the world, I am worthy of care, of consideration, of being heard. The moment you start enforcing your limits without guilt, you stop teaching others that you are willing to be walked over. True connection does not require you to abandon yourself. It requires you to stand firmly in who you are, knowing that real love will never ask you to break yourself to be worthy of it. Triggered. And I think that's part of my problem is as a child, my needs were dismissed or I was punished for wanting to have boundaries. And that's then what I lived through later on in those situations that I was talking about. And for me, when I tried to set boundaries, and can I be clear, silence can be a boundary too. If you don't know what boundary to set, silence can be a boundary too. But when I tried to set those boundaries, needs were dismissed, limits were ignored. The boundaries led to rejection and punishment. So, journaling prompts for you to think about. When did I first learn that setting boundaries was difficult or unsafe? Do I struggle to say no? If so, why? How do I feel when I put my own needs before others? I can hear my old self answering these. How do I feel when I put my own needs before others? Guilty, like I'm being selfish. Not the truth. Have I ever tolerated behavior that made me uncomfortable just to keep the peace? Do I feel guilty when I set a boundary, and where does that guilt come from? How do I respond when someone disrespects my limits? Do I speak up or stay silent? Have I ever mistaken self-sacrifice for love or loyalty? What would a relationship with clear, respectful boundaries look like for me? If I fully trusted that setting boundaries wouldn't push people away, how would I show up differently? What is one boundary I need to set right now to protect my emotional energy? And this is how it shows up in us. And again, some people it can show up one way, some people it can show up a completely different way. So we're going to talk about both ways. A deeply ingrained difficulty in defining, asserting, or maintaining personal limits, often stemming from early experiences of neglect, enmeshment, or conditional love. This wound manifests as people-pleasing, overextending oneself, or struggling to say no. Guilty, guilty, guilty. But I'm working on it. I've been working on this one hard, even at the expense of one's own well-being. There may be an internalized belief that setting boundaries is selfish. Remember what I said my older self was saying? Unkind, or will lead to rejection, causing some to tolerate unhealthy relationships, overcommit, or suppress personal needs to avoid conflict. Some may struggle with distinguishing their own emotions from those of others, feeling overly responsible for people's happiness or discomfort. Emotionally, this wound can lead to resentment, exhaustion, and difficulty forming truly reciprocal connections. Physically, it may manifest as chronic fatigue from overgiving, tension in the throat, difficulty expressing limits, or digestive issues holding in emotional discomfort. Over time, a lack of boundaries can result in burnout, an erosion of self-identity, and relationships that feel one-sided or draining. Watch for patterns of avoiding confrontation, feeling guilty when prioritizing yourself, or attracting individuals who will take advantage of your kindness. I do think this is an important one for us to talk about. Queen of Swords energy, Seven of Wands energy, boundaries. Suppressing the lack of boundaries wound by either completely, this is the other way people will act if they have the lack of boundaries wound. Suppressing the lack of boundaries wound by either completely shutting others out or maintaining walls so rigid that no one can get close. Instead of learning to set healthy limits, some may swing to the extreme of complete emotional withdrawal, refusing to rely on or trust others as a way to avoid potential hurt. This can manifest as isolating oneself, rejecting intimacy, or being overly self-sufficient to the point of exhaustion. Others may continue to allow boundary violations but convince themselves they are fine with it, dismissing their own discomfort as unimportant. Some may even develop passive-aggressive tendencies, expressing unspoken resentment through subtle resistance rather than clear communication. Watch for patterns of avoiding direct conversations, feeling resentment towards those who expect too much, or overcorrecting by creating distance in relationships that don't necessarily require it. Beneath both extremes lies the same need to find balance between generosity and self-protection, learning that boundaries are not barriers, but bridges to healthier connections. And in my circumstance, the boundary, the person took it as a wall, right? All right, so I'm not going to make eye contact with these cards while I shuffle. Otherwise we're going to be here all day. Not looking. I'm not looking. All right, we'll call that done. So let's see what shadows are being triggered here. So the hyena, using humor as a coping mechanism or a defense mechanism, including passive aggressiveness. Interesting. All right, so let's see what shadows are being triggered within whatever connection is on your mind right now. What shadows were being triggered? How did I know? That's so weird. It's not weird. It's amazing. But when I was getting ready for this reading, that is so strange. I was seeing these two cards. All right. So, shadows that are being triggered. We have the elephant, the octopus, the starfish, the whale, and the tarantula. So, how do I want to do this? One thing that this connection, here I go, one thing this connection could have triggered within you is your mission. I know that's not a shadow, but this card is about your mission. So this connection could have triggered the need to make decisions, hard decisions. Maybe about living, like where you live, jobs. It does have to do with your mission. Maybe even the decision to put up boundaries. This is about claiming your life purpose. So there could have been something in this connection that caused you to want to claim your life purpose. The whale. So I see the whale as like the Queen of Cups, the King of Cups. It's someone who is in the upright when in light. It's someone who is very healthy at communicating, emotionally mature, follows their intuition. But the shadow is about feels heavy, slips into the old story, maybe not so healthy communication. So I'm not going to say if this is you or your person, but I am going to talk about the energies. So, like I said, the whale is about someone who slips into the old story, kind of victim mentality, or the connection that you were in could have been repeating some sort of story you lived out as a child in your own home. So you could have been being treated by this person as you were by one of your parents. That could have been triggering. Feels heavy, feels weighed down. So this connection could have made you feel really heavy and weighed down emotionally. You could have felt emotionally burnt out, especially if you were overgiving, overextending yourself, putting up with less than you deserve. It could have made you doubt your intuition. The starfish. This one is about outside appearances, surface level beauty. Maybe this connection triggered, it's interesting with the starfish. It talks about dreams that you put on hold for other people. So you could have been, I always kind of see, for some reason with the starfish, I always see like a stove and you have pots on the stove and your pots go immediately to the back burner. So your dreams, your wishes, your boundaries go to the back burner and you kind of prioritize this person over all else. Someone in this connection could have been very reliant on their outward appearance or how they appear to others rather than what's on the inside. We have the octopus, which this one talks about, I believe this one talks about boundaries as well. Searching for purpose. So this connection definitely could have triggered your purpose, your mission. This is about messy relationships, though. So I feel like whatever this connection was, it became very messy. Other people could have gotten involved in this, the opinions of others. You could have been dealing with someone, or maybe it was you, who kind of talked to people around you about this connection, and then they were giving their opinions. I want to look at that in the book, though. So, the octopus. Where did it go? That's interesting. So I just opened up to the stingray. I want to talk about it. The stingray, shadows, blames others. So someone here could have been blaming someone else or deflecting. Someone here could have been blaming you unfairly. Maybe you were blaming them for things. Like, I can give a good example from like the chaser perspective. So, something that I struggled with, I used to feel really bad about myself. I had no idea what self-love was. I thought I was gonna, leave this world without ever knowing what it meant to love myself. And the way that manifested in me is I would tell my partner, my sweet, gentle partner, that he didn't love me because I didn't feel loved, because I was lacking self-love. So Or like, for example, this one, you know, I didn't feel pretty. So I would say to him, you don't think I'm pretty. You don't make me feel pretty. You don't make me feel like loved. You don't make me feel this. You don't make me feel that. Thank goodness I've healed from that. That's one circumstance where I was definitely blaming him for what was going on within me. But the stingray is also about like someone who can be very defensive, so they sting you with that stingray. So, you know, you're trying to bring up a problem in the relationship. Let's talk about, like, what I see a lot is like the one-sided relationship or someone not putting in enough effort. And someone who's defensive will turn around and blame you. And defensiveness, we were looking at that surrender deck yesterday, and I'm not telling you that if you're defensive, you're weak. But defensiveness is a weakness, and it comes from trying to protect your shadows. It comes from trying to protect your ego. So there could have been some defensiveness within this connection, and it could have been both of you, you know, like, it's not, again, a lot of people are afraid to look at their shadows, so the first thing they do is they jump into defense mode to protect their ego, but blames others and quits. So somebody could have easily just quit this connection. Anyway, I just wanted to bring it up. We have the starfish. So when in balance, uplifting, artistic, expressive. When out of balance, feels empty. So that could have really been triggered within this connection. What dreams have I put aside to please others? So you could have put things that you liked aside to give to this connection. Yeah, this one's about boundaries too. The octopus, reaching, yearning, lacking boundaries, and direction. So the octopus signifies a wonderfully perceptive mind paired with a lack of healthy boundaries. Unfortunately, this results in well-intended but messy relationships. If you notice after spending time with someone that you feel drained or uneasy, the essence of octopus is at play. Begin to establish healthy boundaries. Be patient and firm. It may be a very old habit to change. And this is when I talk about changing lifelong, ingrained, programmed behaviors, which makes me think of the High Priestess. It can be very hard. Like, even just using me apologizing as an example. I used to apologize on my channel so much, and it would trigger me because people would say, like, it's really, like, why do you keep apologizing? Some people were really harsh about it. Some people were nice about it. But it always triggered me because I knew they were right. So I stopped trying to over-apologize, but it was a habit that was so hard to break. And right now I'm trying to break it in 2 of my kids, and it is a hard habit to break. So when in balance, interested, engaged, intelligent. When out of balance, needy, clingy, lacks courage. And this reminds me kind of like that anxious attachment, right? Lacking healthy boundaries. Letting people pull you down and mistreat you or walk all over you. My children are so loud. The tarantula. So, something that could have been triggered within this connection, you could have stopped trusting your own intuition. This person could have made you question your own mind or your own worth. Could have caused a lot of self-doubt. Hesitates, over-intellectualizes. So, being unable to make a decision, being unable to make a decision to walk away if it wasn't serving you, could have caused a lot of overthinking. It also talks about claiming your life's purpose, so I wanted to mention it. And the elephant. So that's interesting. So I'm not sure, but this connection could have triggered lack of trust. So they could have betrayed you, or you had a hard time, like maybe if they didn't betray you, you had a hard time trusting them. I feel like you've been through it with this connection with the broken tusk there. This can also be about misunderstanding fate. So what you felt was a fated connection, I'm not saying it's not a fated connection, totally is. But sometimes, froggy in my throat, releasing, cleansing, healing, even though we feel it's a fated connection, we can struggle to let go of it when we need to. So this could have triggered you to misunderstand, for example, when it was time for separation. Or when it was time to come back together, if you didn't trust them or they broke your trust and then they tried to come back in and it was like a fated releasing, cleansing, healing, froggy in my throat. And then they tried to come back in, you could have, not been trusting in fate and had your guard up. Obstacles with the elephant. So there were a lot of obstacles in this connection for you. All right. I want to look at tarot. Okay. So one thing I'm seeing right away is the shadows that were triggered within this connection. Your inner child was definitely triggered. Their inner child was triggered. Feeling down. To me, the sun in reverse can also talk about some not so healthy tendencies, if you know what I mean, like narcissistic tendencies could have been triggered within this connection. Doubting intuition, creative blocks, emotional immaturity, escapism, avoidance, insecurity, neglecting inner child. So it feels like this connection triggered the wounds both of you were neglecting. And I'm not talking about the fact that you were purposely neglecting these wounds, but they could have been wounds that you didn't even know you had that were being triggered. We have the Ace of Swords, confusion, stress, miscommunication, mental blocks, rethinking, poor judgment, dishonesty, hostility, arguments, destruction. All right, so I'm not going to look at them. I did look at that one. So, what shadows were being triggered within this connection? What shadows were being triggered within this connection? Let's have a look. Let's cut the deck. We have the Page of Pentacles. So lack of progress, immature, underachiever, missed opportunity, poor prospects, foolish, lazy, procrastinator, missed chances. So one thing with the... I knew that what card was going to come out too. Okay. I knew the Six of Wands was going to come out today. I just knew it. So the Six of Wands. The Six of Wands is interesting because there's a few different meanings for shadows. So this would have... Hang on. So this connection would have triggered possibly a neglect wound within you. So feeling unloved, feeling neglected. This could have been something that you struggled with as a child. So maybe you felt like you had to earn love. So this person would have showed up not giving enough energy to this, or not giving enough. They could have been giving less than you were and really triggered that wound within you, leaving you feeling unloved, unseen, neglected. The other thing that it was triggering within this connection, bruised ego. So I was saying this in a reading the other day, but I think it was a personal. But when you have a bruised ego, that's where the defensiveness comes from. You know, imagine having a bruise and somebody's like, does it hurt? I'm going to poke that bruise. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you have a bruise and you like poke it to see if it hurts. No, just me? Okay. But in this connection, the ego would have been triggered. So what happens when you trigger a bruised ego is, well, what happens if somebody looks at a bruise on you and like presses on it really hard? You say, ouch, don't do that. What are you doing? Which is the exact same thing that happens when you trigger someone with a bruised ego. They become defensive. They push away. This even says retreating. So this person could have like completely retreated. We talk about the silent treatment all the time. It also says fear of failure, giving up, lack of confidence. So think about it. Lack of confidence. So if you were lacking that confidence, remember what I said about myself, and you didn't feel loved, right? Because you were lacking that self-love, lacking that confidence. Because this person possibly neglected you. I mean, Page of Pentacles in reverse. I feel like somebody here wasn't putting in as much effort as somebody else. I already know who. That would have triggered this lack of confidence within you. Because when we're confident, when we're full of self-love, and we're willing to put up healthy boundaries, and we can, that lack of boundaries talked about, we know what we're willing to allow into our energy, right? So if you are confident and you feel loved and seen as yourself, in your within, then if somebody was showing up ignoring you and not giving you enough, you'd be like, I have no interest in this. But for someone who has that neglect wound, they keep giving to that situation. And the less the other person gives, the more triggered the feelings of feeling unloved, being neglected become. And for a lot of us, this stems from our childhood. And again, egoism, bruised ego. So you could have really triggered this person's ego. And you can resonate with either one of these things I'm talking about. But typically in our community, I see the viewers usually, and I'm not trying to put you in a box, but usually the viewers resonate with like lack of putting up boundaries, fear of putting up boundaries, lack of self-love, overgiving, people-pleasing. Whereas the people they're attracting struggle with the other things. So keep in mind when I'm saying you might have been and they might have been, you might resonate with the other one. I'm also, I don't know what I was going to say there. Doesn't matter. Seven of Wands. Boundaries. Defensiveness. So this connection could have triggered you to need to learn how to put up healthy boundaries. Could have triggered defensiveness within you. Definitely triggered defensiveness with your person, I'm hearing. Boundaries, defending your position. Like, again, this was meant for you to put up healthy boundaries is what I'm hearing. Whereas the person you were dealing with could have been quite defensive. And this says weak boundaries. So anyway, what I'm seeing is you could have been dealing with someone with a failure to commit because probably fear of abandonment or immaturity. You could have ended up feeling very unloved, very unseen, neglected. which probably caused, I talk about this all the time, when we give and we give and we give and we give, our cup becomes empty because we're lacking that self-love, so we overgive, thinking that we're going to earn that love, and then our cup becomes empty, we become resentful, we bring it up, dealing with a bruised ego, defensiveness, arguments, miscommunication. We have weak boundaries for whatever reason. So I definitely feel like this connection was meant for you to put up healthy boundaries, to learn how to put up healthy boundaries, to learn how to love yourself. Anyway, that's what we have so far. So what else? I'm only going to get a few tarot cards. What else was this? What shadows was this connection triggering? Okay, I'll take them. I'll take them. So here we have the Six of Swords. So this connection could have been triggering wounds that neither one of you had moved on from. Triggered returning to trouble. So again, this connection, you could have been in choppy waters, blocked throat chakra. You could have had a hard time speaking up about your needs, your expectations, blocked throat chakra. But you could have kept going back to the choppy waters, right? So you could have kept chasing this person, or you could have kept, like, maybe there was a period of silence and then you went right back, and then there was silence and you went right back, and like a cycle repeated. It also says running away. So you could have been running away from some of the shadows you needed to heal that were being triggered. You could have been dealing with someone who is running from their shadows. A lot of people run from their shadows because, again, they've been programmed to feel shame, or as someone who easily admits shadows, I mean, I get why they get defensive. I get it. But as someone who's working on healing shadows, it's also incredibly empowering. You know, it causes you to grow. I always feel compassion and a little bit sad for people who run away from things. Like, you could have been dealing with someone who, whenever there was conflict, or whenever someone put up boundaries, or whenever they were feeling defensive, they ran. But again, I'm also seeing like returning to the choppy waters, possibly on your side. Okay. Blaming others unfairly, justice, an imbalance. So if this person was not giving you very much, it was triggering that neglect wound within you. You could have tried to talk to this person about some of these things, and they could have blamed you unfairly. So think about it. Just remember, and this might trigger some of you. This may trigger some of you, but a lot of people, myself in the past included, because of defensiveness, because of ego, some people are very quick to blame others. It's not me, it's you. It's not me, it's them. So you could have been blaming this person unfairly. Remember how I talked about how I was blaming my partner in the past unfairly for not feeling loved or beautiful, when that is supposed to come from within me. I have no problem in admitting that now, but at the time I felt I was completely justified in blaming him, which is horrible. But I've forgiven myself, and he's forgiven me. But lack of accountability, exactly. So I'm always very wary of people who are very quick to blame others and get defensive, right? Like highly defensive people who are quick to blame others, who, I hate to say it, but people who will say like, my ex, it was all them. They were nuts. They were crazy. It was all them. It was all their fault. Oh, that person at work that I got into a fight with, it was all them. It was all their fault. It was my parents' fault. It was this person's fault. Like, they're always pointing the finger at somebody else. Red flag. And I didn't know that was a red flag until it was too late. So yeah, this person could have been dishonest to you. They could have triggered a trust wound within you. But blaming unfairly. I'm seeing a card shift the blame. Hang on. It's funny because I was going to get this deck for you. And that goes for us too. Like, we can't just blame the other person that we're connected to. Like, sometimes we blame them when really they're just triggering something within us. So look at this. I don't have the card on me. Well, I could get it. Let me see. Usually this card has come out a lot. You know what? I'm just going to pause it. Hang on. I also just had a download while I was looking through those cards about that justice card. So for some of you, this person, maybe they didn't deceive you, or maybe you didn't deceive them, but maybe the wound of distrust or a wound of broken trust was triggered, where, let's just say you had been cheated on before or hurt before. It could have been this person as well, but you could have carried that wound into this connection with you, projecting that lack of trust onto this person, convinced they were going to do the same thing to you. Do you know what I mean? Or they could have had that wound and projected it onto you. But shifting the blame. So here's the card. And you can see that person pointing, right? No one says the journey of life is a smooth ride. Accidents happen, things go wrong, we make mistakes, and not everything turns out the way we want. We usually look for a reason or a cause for whatever happened to us. Our immediate reaction is often to try and find something or somebody else to blame for our problems. We hope to either change the other person with our criticism or make them feel smaller than us by putting them down. When we criticize others, we are projecting onto them as the judgments we inwardly place on ourselves. It's hard to admit that sometimes the others whom we criticize are us. To grow into the person that you are capable of becoming is to be accountable for your own actions. Unless you can take full responsibility for your part in a situation, you can't be accountable. You are endowed with such a great capacity to love every aspect of yourself. The most powerful step to healing relationships and gaining self-acceptance is to embrace yourself. Trying to hide your flaws and mistakes or project them onto others does not eliminate anything. Apply the antidote to being critical of those around you by learning to have more love and respect for yourself. When you seek to value your true self and love who you are, you will naturally be able to see and appreciate the true nature of others. This is how you can develop the capacity to connect more honestly with anyone you encounter. And someone here had a hard time taking accountability. Lack of accountability. And again, that comes from a wounded place. It's that defensiveness, which comes from weakness. All right. So, Four of Cups. So, what wound was being triggered here? Feeling like you were being taken for granted with the Four of Cups. The other thing I'm hearing is someone not choosing their happiness, because the Four of Cups in reverse is about choosing happiness, acceptance, self-awareness. So you were both meant to trigger more self-awareness in each other, how to choose happiness over other things. So You know, from what I'm seeing, maybe this person was prioritizing work over you or prioritizing drinking over you, like whatever it was. This card is about choosing happiness, even if being on your own is better for you, right? That Lover's card can be about the choice you make, even though you love someone, to be on your own and focus on your self-love, to choose happiness. So if you're in a situation that's unfulfilling and someone's taking you for granted, and someone's not noticing or appreciating that love you're trying to give for them, it can be about choosing your own happiness, putting up boundaries. So these are some of the things that were meant to be triggered within this connection. 3 of Pentacles, teamwork, not being a good teammate in love. So there's definitely something about an energetic balance here, where somebody could have been putting in more effort, not even just more effort into the connection, but more effort into healing. It's really hard if you're in a connection and only one of you are on this healing journey, only one of you are looking at your shadows, only one of you is taking accountability. Like, this is about disharmony. So this was meant to be triggered within this connection so that you could learn what a good teammate is, so they could learn how to show up as a better teammate. Ego, conflict, misalignment. To figure out when someone is energetically misaligned with you. It doesn't mean they won't ever be in alignment with you, but I talk about counterparts all the time, about how they're oftentimes not in alignment with each other. And you try and I'll just get them out. You try and make it work. This goes for anything. If there's resistance, something's out of alignment, right? If you're feeling resistance, that can go for work, that can go for friendship. If you're feeling resistance, something's out of alignment. No matter how much you try and force it together. Do you like my nails? I think they look like little butterflies. I thought we're going to do a shadow reading. Squirrel. We're going to do a shadow reading. I'll do my nails to me they look like butterflies, but anyway, transformation. So yeah, this was definitely not working together as a team. So think about it. Maybe you were ready to learn the lesson that you deserve reciprocity and that you don't have to overgive to earn that reciprocity. In comes this person who wasn't giving you reciprocity, triggered that within you. Do you know what I mean? Maybe this person was ready to learn the lesson that in order for there to be an energetic flow, you have to work as a team. So maybe this person had a hard time working as a team. Enter you. We have the Hermit. So this was meant to awaken both of you. Spiritually awaken you. Trigger you to look at your shadows. To go within. To learn how to be happy alone. I also think, I should know this, but I don't follow the moons as closely as I should. But isn't it a full moon today? If you have some of these wounds, journal about it and say, I'm releasing this wound. Half the battle of these wounds is recognizing when they're triggered so that you can act in different ways. Anyway. So it forms in the spaces where you were unseen, where emotions were dismissed, where love felt like something to be earned rather than something you naturally deserved. This wound manifests in self-doubt, difficulty receiving love, ouch, people-pleasing, or a lingering sense of unworthiness. Ow! This one is tough. You may find yourself seeking approval, fearing rejection, or struggling to trust your own needs because the one who is meant to show you unconditional love left you questioning if you were ever enough. Healing the mother wound is about becoming the mother to yourself that you always needed. It is about unlearning the belief that love must be proven, that your needs are too much, and that you are only worthy when you are perfect. You do not need to carry her pain. You do not have to repeat her patterns. You are allowed to nurture yourself, to meet your own needs, to give yourself the love that was withheld. When you stop looking for the love you've never received and start being that love for yourself, you break the cycle. You step into your own wholeness, not as someone waiting to be chosen, but as someone who finally chooses themselves. I'm curious how many of you wanted this person to choose you. Maybe you felt like they weren't choosing you. I started re-mothering myself when I had children. Anyway. So, journaling prompts or reflections. How did my relationship with my mother shape my ability to receive love? I have a really hard time, or I had a really hard time receiving love. I still struggle with it sometimes, like receiving generosity from people. I said yesterday, like in the beginning of my channel, I had a really hard time receiving nice comments from you guys because I didn't believe them. And now they warm my heart. I love getting your comments. Do I struggle to nurture myself? And if so, why? What unmet childhood needs do I still seek to fulfill my adult relationships? Have I ever mistaken self-sacrifice for love? Do I fear emotional closeness or do I cling to it? So think about anxious attachment and avoidant. Both come from a mother wound or a father wound. What messages did I receive about my worth from my mother or maternal figure? Have I unconsciously repeated my mother's patterns in my relationships? That's an important one. It's funny, at some point, I can't remember when it was, but I realized that I was repeating my mother's patterns. Right around the boundary thing that I talked about at the beginning of this reading. I was like, oh my gosh, I am putting up with what my mother put up with her whole life and continues to put up with to this day. How can I reparent myself in ways that nurture the parts of me that were neglected? You know, for me, it's being goofy. It's being authentically myself. It's letting my kids be as loud as they want, as long as they're having fun. What does true unconditional love look like to me, and do I believe I am worthy of it? How can I heal my relationship with the maternal energy within myself? So, mother wounds. A deep emotional imprint formed from an unfulfilled, strained, or complicated relationship with the mother or maternal figure, often affecting self-worth, emotional regulation, and the ability to receive love. This wound manifests as difficulty nurturing oneself, seeking validation from external sources, or struggling with feelings of abandonment, rejection, or conditional love. Some may feel emotionally distant from their mother due to neglect, criticism, or enmeshment, while others may carry resentment for unmet childhood needs. There may be an internalized belief that love must be earned or that vulnerability leads to rejection, the boundary thing, making it difficult to trust relationships fully. Emotionally, this wound can create cycles of self-sacrifice, people-pleasing, or avoidance of deep connections. Physically, it may manifest as heart chakra blockages, difficulty receiving love, digestive issues, emotional suppression, or tension in the shoulders, carrying emotional burdens. Over time, an unhealed mother wound can result in struggles with self-nurturing, codependency, or difficulty embracing one's own femininity and intuition. Watch for patterns of self-criticism, fear of emotional dependency, or feeling undeserving of unconditional love. Suppressing the mother wound by either rejecting all maternal influence, denying the need for nurturing care or emotional closeness, and think about it. when we talk about counterparts, the divine masculine runs from the Empress, who is someone who's worked on nurturing and being down to earth and their femininity, not talking about gender. Where was I? Or overcompensating by seeking motherly validation in unhealthy ways. Some may emotionally shut down, distancing themselves from love and affection as a defense mechanism, refusing to acknowledge past pain, while unconsciously repeating inherited emotional patterns from their mother. This can manifest as hyper-independence, avoidance of deep relationships, or rejecting feminine energy altogether. Others may go in the opposite direction, becoming overly attached to maternal approval, constantly seeking comfort from external figures, or struggling with emotional dependency in relationships. Some may suppress this wound by taking on the caretaker role, always prioritizing others while neglecting their own needs. My little Queen of Cups, you overgivers. Watch for patterns of rejecting nurturing energy, fearing intimacy, or unable to express emotions freely. Beneath both extremes lies the same longing to feel seen, loved, and nurtured in a way that feels safe and unconditional. Money wounds. I definitely have money wounds. Money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but it will not replace you as the driver. You know, I don't know what this is about, but like I see a lot of people like become workaholics or think that money is the most important thing. For me, my money wound is that I operate from a place of lack. So I grew up being taught we lack money. And I've been working on healing this mother wound. I've been working on that too, but mending or healing this money wound that I have. Because it's like I'm always living, or I was always living like I was living from a place of lack, which is actually just calls in more lack of abundance. Anyway, are you running from this money wound? Do you have a money wound that you're running from? Oh, how nice. My nose is bleeding a little. Dry nose. It's that time of year. So, the money wound convinces you that wealth is either out of reach or that it defines your worth. It is a subconscious belief that money is tied to morality, that struggle is noble, or that financial success is reserved for others. This wound often stems from childhood experiences, scarcity, financial instability, or messages that money is dangerous, corrupting, or hard to come by. It manifests as fear of spending, guilt around receiving, self-sabotage in financial opportunities, or cycles of earning and losing wealth without stability. When money is seen as an uncontrollable force rather than a tool, it begins to control you instead of the other way around. Healing the money wound is about reclaiming your role. Hang on. Where was I? Healing the money wound is about reclaiming your role as the driver of your financial story. Money is not your master, nor is it the answer to all things. It is a resource, a form of energy that flows in alignment with your beliefs and choices. True financial freedom comes when you shift from fear to empowerment, recognizing that you are allowed to receive, to build, and to thrive without shame. When you stop seeing money as something that defines you and start using it as a tool to support the life you want, you break free from scarcity. You are not meant to struggle. You are meant to create, grow, and receive with ease. What beliefs about money did I inherit from my family, and do they serve me? Do I feel guilty or ashamed when I receive money? If so, why? How do I define financial success, and is that definition my own or shaped by external expectations? Have I ever sabotaged financial opportunities out of fear of unworthiness? Do I associate money with safety, power, or love? How does that influence my relationship with it? What emotions arise when I think about financial abundance? Excitement, anxiety, guilt, or fear? How do I treat money when I have it? Do I hold on to it too tightly, spend it impulsively, or use it wisely? What would change if I saw money as a neutral resource rather than something tied to morality or identity? What is one practical step I can take today to shift my relationship with money? A deeply ingrained struggle with financial... That's not my cute little kids. That's not an affirmation. A deeply ingrained struggle with financial security, worthiness, and abundance, often rooted in generational beliefs, past financial instability, or cultural conditioning. This wound manifests as fear around money, either holding onto it too tightly out of scarcity or spending impulsively to fill an emotional void. Some may feel undeserving of financial success, associating wealth with greed or corruption, while others may believe that no matter how hard they work, they will never have enough. There may be a subconscious guilt around receiving abundance, leading to self-sabotage, undercharging for one's work. Oh my gosh, that was a problem for me when I was a photographer. Or avoiding financial responsibility altogether. Emotionally, this wound can create anxiety, shame, or fear of financial dependence, leading to cycles of feast or famine. Physically, it may manifest as tension in the lower back, digestive issues, or headaches. Over time, unresolved money wounds can result in financial instability, difficulty accepting prosperity, or living in survival mode rather than thriving. Watch for patterns of financial avoidance, chronic under-earning, or tying self-worth to income and productivity. It's a good thing I read that, because some of that was very, ow, to me. Suppressing the money wound by either completely rejecting financial ambition or becoming overly obsessed with accumulating wealth as a means of control. Instead of healing, some may adopt a money doesn't matter mindset, avoiding financial planning, disregarding opportunities for abundance, or convincing themselves they are meant to struggle. This can manifest as avoiding budgeting, underpricing services, or feeling guilty when experiencing financial ease. Others may go in the opposite direction, hyper-focusing on financial success, equating money with safety, and becoming consumed with material security to avoid deeper emotional wounds. Yeah, that's given a little bit of distorted masculine energy. This can result in workaholism, hoarding wealth without enjoying it, or measuring self-worth by financial status. Some may suppress this wound by engaging in reckless financial behaviors, behaving that they are destined for scarcity no matter what. Watch for patterns of rejecting prosperity, fearing success, or using money as a way to control emotions and relationships. Beneath both extremes lies the same truth. Money is not inherently good or bad, but a tool for empowerment, stability, and aligned living. So, we still have 4 more to go. I was not going to take that many, but that's the amount that came out, so I feel like I have to... Well, I don't have to do anything, but I want to read them all. If this is where I lose you, I love you. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time. When you're at the end of your rope, tie a knot and hold on. Theodore Roosevelt. The despair wound. Despair settles in when you feel the weight of the world pressing down. 10 of Wands. When all that once seemed possible now feels beyond your reach. It tells you that nothing will ever change, that your efforts have been in vain, and that you are running on empty. It convinces you that you're out of options, that there's no way forward, no hope left to grasp. But the truth is, despair only wins when you stop reaching, when you stop holding on, when you stop believing that there is a way through. The whole time I was reading that, all I could hear in my head was the thing from The Princess Bride, the pits of despair. That's from that movie, right? Healing from despair requires strength you may not even know you have. It begins in that moment of choosing to hold on, to trust even when the way is unclear, the path forward is still there. It's about realizing that every small step you take, Every breath, every moment of choosing is not to give up. Every moment of choosing not to give up is a victory. The fight isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the courage to keep moving, even when everything around you seems to tell you to stop. When you hold on, you allow space for hope to creep in again, one small step at a time. And what's weird is I was also feeling called to do a love reading for people who are in despair. So that will be coming up in a few days. When was the last time I felt a sense of meaning or purpose, and what made me feel that way? Right now, hanging out with my besties. Do I allow myself to fully acknowledge feelings of despair, or do I try and suppress them? It's not good to suppress them either. Like, if you're feeling that way, I always tell my kids, feel your feelings. Don't push them down, feel them. If you push them down, they become stronger. Sit in the pits of despair, feel that energy, and then release it. What past experiences have contributed to my belief that things won't get better? How do I react when I see others experiencing hope and joy? What small moments of comfort or connection have I overlooked in my struggle? Do I feel safe expressing my sadness to others? Why or why not? If I knew for certain that change was possible, what would I allow myself to hope for? What would I say to a friend who felt the way I do now? How does despair affect my ability to take action in my life? What is one small, tangible thing I can do today to reconnect with life, even in a small way? Just myself, I tend to trigger people with the despair wound, like in a big way. Because I don't know why. Maybe I healed this wound early, like when I was in therapy as a teenager. But I'd say from maybe it was after I had my first set of twins in therapy. I've been to therapy a lot. I had a relapse after I had my first set of twins because postpartum depression. But I trigger people with this wound because I have the Pollyanna syndrome, where I believe we can get through anything. And I don't remember having it until my 20s. But this is one that I trigger in other people for sure. So, despair wound, a profound sense of hopelessness, emotional exhaustion, and disconnection from purpose, often born from repeated disappointments, grief, or the belief that nothing will ever truly change. This wound manifests as an inability to see beyond present struggles, a loss of motivation, and a feeling of being weighed down by life itself. There may be an internalized belief that effort is meaningless, that joy is fleeting, and that the world is indifferent to one's suffering. Some may feel trapped in cycles of defeat, unable to envision a future worth striving for, while others may experience numbness, an emotional shutdown as a means of survival. Physically, this wound can manifest as chronic fatigue, heaviness in the body, or difficulty breathing through carrying an unseen weight. Over time, despair can lead to deep isolation, a withdrawal from once loved activities, and a reluctance to seek help, believing that nothing will make a difference. Watch for patterns of self-neglect, detachment from hope, or an underlying belief that happiness is unattainable. Suppressing the despair wound by either forcing artificial positivity or numbing emotional pain through distraction, avoidance, or overfunctioning. Instead of confronting feelings of hopelessness, some may adopt a relentless keep-going mentality, refusing to acknowledge emotional exhaustion out of fear of falling apart. This can manifest as an obsession with productivity, overcommitting to responsibilities, or constantly keeping busy to avoid introspection. That's something that I pick up in my readings a lot. People who avoid self-reflection by distracting themselves with substances, with work, with being overly busy. I think I talked about it in a couple love readings ago, like people who have a really hard time sitting in silence. Others may rely on escapism, immersing themselves in entertainment, substances, or shallow relationships to avoid confronting the depth of their despair. Some may dismiss their own suffering, convincing themselves that others have it worse as a way to invalidate their emotions. Watch for patterns of toxic positivity, avoidance of deep conversations, or a tendency to minimize personal struggles. Beneath the distractions or forced optimism is an aching truth. Despair does not need to be suppressed or solved instantly, but witnessed and honored as a part of the journey towards healing. I definitely had some of this before I was 20. 3 more. It's 333 here, and we have 3 more. I love magic. 333. So, codependency. I like this quote. You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Yes, let's stop doing that, please. Codependency convinces you that love means sacrifice, that your worth is measured by how much you give, how much you fix, how much of yourself you are willing to lose for someone else. It teaches you to prioritize others over yourself, to mistake self-abandonment for devotion, to believe that boundaries are selfish. Ow, 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 ow. And so you pour and you pour until there is nothing left. I was talking about this, Queen of Cups. Hoping that if you give enough, they will stay, they will change, they will finally give back what you have so freely offered. But love that costs you yourself is not love. It is a wound disguised as loyalty. Ow. I know some of you felt that one. Healing from codependency does not mean you stop caring. It means you learn to care without losing yourself. It means recognizing that love is not something you have to earn by overextending, that you are not responsible for saving others at the expense of your own well-being. Exactly. Love is not meant to deplete you. It is meant to nourish both giver and receiver. The moment you choose yourself, the moment you, listen up, chasers, divine feminines, this is for you. The moment you choose yourself, the moment you stop begging for the bare minimum, the moment you realize you are worthy of love that does not require suffering, you step into freedom. And in that freedom, real love finally has a space to exist. Exactly. Where did I learn that love must be earned through service or self-sacrifice? As a child. Do I feel guilty when I prioritize my own needs, and why? I still struggle with this one a little. You know how I told you I take time to myself every day? Sometimes, like last night, I was like, I'm going to go sit in my room for a while. I've been doing readings all day. My head hurts. I just need quiet. I just need to be alone. And then I came up here and I was feeling guilty. So healing is a constant thing. And these wounds, they're healing. So just because you're aware of it doesn't mean it won't get triggered. Just because you're healing it doesn't mean you won't feel it. They take a long time to heal. So don't don't get frustrated with yourself if you can't heal it instantly, or if it gets triggered again. How do I react when someone does something for me with no expectation of return? Guilty. In what ways have I abandoned myself in relationships to keep the peace? Well, I think I already shared that with you at the beginning of this reading. What would my relationships look like if I truly believed I was enough, just as I am? You are enough just as you are. Just as you are, Bridget Jones. When was the last time I made a decision based solely on what I wanted? How do I differentiate between genuine care and codependent attachment? What is one small way I can honor my own needs without guilt today? I have a test for you. I'm curious. Maybe you're not all as unhealthy as I used to be, but when I used to go on planes and they would be giving the safety demonstration and they would be talking about the masks that fall from the sky, they would say, be sure to put your mask on first. And every time I watched it, I would be like, how could I do that? Of course I'm going to put it on somebody else before I put it on me. Unhealed. And I'm curious, have any of you ever felt that way? Now, I believe I'd be no use to my child if I didn't have my own mask on. But unhealed me, more unhealed me, I'm still working on it. I thought that was like, what? Put my own mask on first? What are you talking about? All right. So, codependency wounds, a deeply ingrained pattern of self-worth being tied to meeting the needs of others, often at the cost of personal identity and well-being. This wound manifests as an inability to set boundaries, a fear of abandonment, hello, and an instinctive need to fix or rescue others. Exactly. There may be a compulsion to anticipate and manage the emotions of those around you, prioritizing their happiness over your own. Remember, I was seeing that stove, with you putting your pots on the back burner. Over time, this dynamic can lead to exhaustion, resentment, and a loss of personal desires, as one's sense of self dissolves into the role of caregiver, peace giver, or emotional buffer. Relationships may feel imbalanced, with a tendency to attract those who take more than they give. Physically, this wound can show up as digestive distress, chronic fatigue, or tension in the throat and chest from suppressing personal needs. Watch for patterns of people-pleasing, over-apologizing, and struggling to say no even when depleted. It's so funny. I'm having this flashback to, it was sometime last year where that friend who blocked me wanted my help with something, but at the time she was like, I was going through my own stuff and I had such a hard time saying no. I remember I came on and did like a soul tribe reading and I talked to you guys about it and you were all like, it's okay to say no. Like, that's how hard of a time I used to have saying no. This is something I'm teaching my 13-year-old empath. Like, we talk about how we inherit trauma, and my poor little 13-year-old empath has inherited my trauma without me ever acting in the ways towards them that my parents did. So they, like, people please. They don't know how to say no. They have a hard time taking time to themselves, and they need it because they're also neurodivergent. They're autistic, and they need a lot of alone time to regulate. So that's something I'm teaching my kids as well. And I hope that those of you who have children can teach them some of the stuff you've learned about healing. You probably already are. Suppressing the codependency wound by swinging to the opposite extreme, rejecting connection, becoming hyper-independent, or shutting down emotionally to avoid being needed by others. Do you see what I mean? This is like devil energy, codependency. And codependency sounds like you're codependent on something, so you attach. But in other people, like runners, like the masculine, not talking about gender, talking about in terms of counterpart connections, they turn into this, rejecting connection, hyper-independence, shutting down emotionally to avoid being needed by others. Instead of addressing the fear of being unworthy outside of service, it is buried beneath a persona of detachment, aloofness, or complete self-sufficiency. This can manifest as pushing people away, refusing help even when necessary, or developing an aversion to deep emotional intimacy. Some may overcompensate. Like, think about it. Maybe you were dealing with someone who had an aversion to deep emotional intimacy, but that wound, that shadow that they were projecting outward, made you feel like you were undesirable, or you were unworthy of love, or they didn't have feelings for you. Because again, we also take on the shadows of others. Some may overcompensate by maintaining rigid boundaries to avoid any possibility of enmeshment, mistaking isolation for self-protection. Others may seek relationships that feel emotionally safe by remaining distant or keeping interactions surface level. Watch for patterns of fear around vulnerability, resisting healthy interdependence, or struggling to receive love without feeling an obligation to give something in return. Beneath the armor of independence is still the same wound, waiting to be healed through balance, self-worth, and mutual connection. Fear of failure. And then we just have one more. And fear of failure can stop people from living or going after their dreams. Fear of failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success. The fear of failure is not really about failing. It is about what failure means. It is the belief that if you fall short, you are inadequate. That if you try and don't succeed, you will be judged, ridiculed, or even worse, left behind. This wound convinces you that mistakes define you. Can I just say something? This is a shadow that I do see people project outward, and I can give you a really clear example. I've experienced it. I see it in my readings all the time. So, when I was talking about like telling somebody that they hurt you, someone with a fear of failure can become very defensive if you told them that they hurt you, or they made some sort of mistake, or they did something wrong. Because internally, they feel like they've failed, even though you're not telling them that they've failed. And then they, like internally, they think that they're a failure, or they feel like you're criticizing them. And then they can get defensive, and then an argument starts. I just wanted to say that. This wound convinces you that mistakes define you, that imperfection is unacceptable, and that it is safer to stay where you are than to risk failing. It keeps you frozen in hesitation, waiting for the right time or the perfect conditions, or the guarantee that you won't fail. Again, I pick up on this energy in my readings, where somebody has a fear that if they come in, they'll let you down, or if they reach out, you'll reject them, and it keeps them on that should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I. It's not as black and white as if they wanted to, they would. Failure is not the end. It is the doorway to mastery, resilience, and growth. The only true failure is refusing to begin. Healing the fear of failure requires shifting your perspective. Failure is not proof of your inadequacy. It is evidence that you are trying, growing, and expanding beyond your comfort zone. Every misstep teaches you something. Every setback refines you. Success is not about getting it right the first time. It is about learning, adjusting, and continuing forward despite your stumbles. When you embrace failure as a necessary part of your journey, it no longer holds power over you. You stop fearing the fall and start trusting yourself to rise. Exactly. I have this thing downstairs. In this house, we make mistakes. We forgive. We apologize. But when you're dealing with someone who has a fear of failure, they might not be okay with making a mistake. What does failure mean to me, and where did I learn that definition? Have I ever avoided something I wanted because I was afraid I wouldn't succeed? Exactly. How do I react when I make mistakes? Do I reflect, freeze, or try and hide them? So like when I made mistakes as a child, punishment. That is not how I approach my children when they make mistakes. So don't be hard on yourself. Like, I even see it in my readings, or I see it where in the comments where some of you were like, I reached out, I chased, and now I feel like a failure. You're not a failure. You know, I can give you a really good example. You reached out and they left you unread, or they didn't respond. Reflect on how that made you feel. It's a learning experience. You didn't make a mistake by reaching out. You're not you're working on your chaser energy, and now you have one more experience that shows you when I chase and they don't respond, I feel rejected. It doesn't make me feel good to chase, right? It's not a failure. It's not even a mistake. You're learning something valuable. So don't be so hard on yourself. Easier said than done. Where was I? Do I equate my worth with my achievements? Why or why not? What is one failure I have experienced that ultimately led to growth or a better opportunity? How do I handle setbacks? Do I adjust, or do I let them define me? What would I attempt if I knew failure was impossible? How do I speak to myself when I don't meet my own expectations? What small step can I take towards a goal today, even if it's imperfect? What would life look like if I embraced failure as a teacher rather than a threat? So when I grew up and I made a mistake, I was punished. So for most of my life, whenever I made a mistake, I would punish myself. I would be really hard on myself. Pre-awakening journey. But also, it's hard when you're connected to someone with a fear of failure, because they can take you saying, when you did this, it hurt me, as an attack or as a criticism, or they can internalize that they're a failure. A deeply ingrained fear that making mistakes, falling short, and not meeting expectations equates to personal inadequacy. This wound manifests as procrastination, perfectionism, or an avoidance of risks that might lead to disappointment. There may be an internalized belief that failure is a reflection of worth rather than a necessary part of growth, leading to cycles of self-doubt, anxiety, and hesitation. Some may struggle to start projects fearing they won't be good enough, while others may overwork themselves to exhaustion in an attempt to prevent failure altogether. It's getting dark in here. Anything I say triggers a song in my head. When I said that, I immediately started hearing "It's Getting Hot in Here," but more like "It's getting dark in here, so dark, so turn on all your lights." Like, that's what it's like in my head. It is getting so dark, I'm gonna turn my lights on. I just thought I'd let you into my head for a minute. Where was I? Emotionally, this wound can create feelings of shame, embarrassment, or regret over past mistakes, making it difficult to move forward. Physically, it may manifest as muscle tension, digestive distress, or restlessness from an underlying fear of being judged or falling behind. Over time, fear of failure can lead to missed opportunities, stifled potential, and an inability to experience the richness of life due to excessive self-criticism. Watch for patterns of playing small, avoiding challenges, or tying self-worth to external achievements. Suppressing the fear of failure by either avoiding meaningful pursuits altogether or becoming hyper-focused on external success to mask internal insecurities. Instead of addressing the wound, some may refuse to engage in anything where failure is a possibility, convincing themselves that staying in their comfort zone is smart or safe. This can manifest as chronic indecision, self-sabotage, or underachieving despite having the potential for more. Others may go in the opposite direction, obsessively chasing accomplishments, constantly striving for perfection, or defining their entire identity by success. Some may even reject the idea of failure itself, blaming external circumstances or avoiding accountability to protect their ego. Exactly. So people who get really defensive or can't take accountability, deep down they have a fear of failure and they feel like a failure. Watch for patterns of over-explaining mistakes, struggling to handle constructive criticism, or fearing vulnerability because it might expose those imperfections. Beneath the resistance lies the same longing to take risk, to trust in one's resilience, and to embrace failure as a stepping stone rather than an end point. Exactly. It's very dark in here. One more to go, and then I'll end this reading. I was going to get one more deck, but I think that this has been long enough. I don't mind. All right. Pain. No, that's not right. Pattern. Breaking repetitive pattern syndrome. That must be under B, right? Oh dear, I should just pause it. It's not under B. Okay, back to P. I should just pause it. Again, hang on. My only complaint about this book, there's no table of contents, not that I would use it anyway. And it's like weird. It's like sometimes like this, the need to heal codependency wounds under C. Breaking repetitive pattern syndrome. So I went to P, wasn't there. So then I went to B, wasn't there. So then I went back to P, wasn't there. Looked under R. Breaking repetitive pattern syndrome. It's under R. Make it make sense. I don't know. I turned a light on because it was getting so dark in here. If you want something different, you have to do something different. Exactly. Doing the same thing, the same pattern, like treating it the same way, expecting something different, staying in a pattern, expecting it to be different. What's the saying? Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Is that the saying? Anyway. Guilty. Repetitive pattern syndrome is the experience of reliving the same struggles, attracting the same toxic relationships, or making the same choices despite wanting a different outcome. This wound manifests like the chasing cycle. This wound manifests that change is impossible. No. This wound convinces you. Where did I get manifest? This wound convinces you that change is impossible, that no matter how much you hope for something new, you will always end up back where you started. It manifests as self-sabotage, falling into familiar yet unhealthy dynamics, or feeling powerless to break cycles that seemed ingrained in your life. You may ask yourself, why does this keep happening to me? But the truth is, the pattern persists because part of you still unconsciously plays by the same old rules. Healing this wound begins with radical self-awareness and intentional action. The cycle only continues when you react the same way, choose the same comfort zones, or ignore the lessons life is trying to teach you. If you want something different, you must be willing to do something different. That means setting boundaries where you never have before, choosing self-respect over familiarity, and walking away from what no longer serves you, even when it feels uncomfortable. The moment you disrupt the pattern, the spell is broken. You are not doomed to repeat the past. You are being invited to rise beyond it. So, where were we? The journaling prompts. What reoccurring themes or struggles have appeared throughout my life? Do I recognize any repeated patterns in my relationships, career, or personal habits? Have I ever blamed circumstances or others for patterns that I may subconsciously be repeating? What fears arise when I think about breaking free from a familiar cycle? Do I believe I have the power to create different outcomes, or do I feel stuck in fate? How do I react when I notice myself slipping into an old pattern? Do I embrace it, resist it, or shame myself? I think the most important thing you can do is notice that you're slipping back into the same pattern. be aware of it. Don't shame yourself for it, like the chasing. What's the lesson that you learned from it? Have I mistaken predictability for safety even when it has caused me pain? In what is one new way I can respond the next time I notice a reoccurring situation? How would my life change if I truly believed I was capable of choosing a new path? What supportive habits or mindsets can help me consciously break free from repetitive cycles? A deeply ingrained cycle of repeating the same emotional, relational, or behavioral patterns, often rooted in unresolved trauma, subconscious conditioning, or karmic imprints. This wound manifests as feeling stuck, reliving similar painful experiences, or attracting the same unhealthy dynamics despite efforts to change. Some may struggle with self-awareness, failing to recognize their role in the cycle, while others may feel powerless to break free, believing they are destined to repeat the past. There may be an internalized belief that change is unsafe or impossible, leading to self-sabotage or fear of stepping out of the familiar, even when it is harmful. Emotionally, this wound can create frustration, learned helplessness, and deep inner conflict, desiring transformation but unconsciously resisting it. Physically, it may manifest as chronic stress from repeated emotional triggers, digestive issues, difficulty processing past wounds, or exhaustion from reliving similar traumas. Over time, unresolved repetitive patterns can lead to stagnation, loss of confidence, and a reluctance to take new risks. Watch for patterns of attracting the same type of relationships, making the same mistakes, or struggling to break habits that no longer serve you. Suppressing the repetitive pattern syndrome wound by either ignoring the cycle, convincing oneself that these patterns are random or unavoidable, or overcorrecting by attempting to control every outcome. Some may refuse to acknowledge that they are caught in a loop, blaming external circumstances instead of exploring the deeper reasons behind their repeated experiences. This can manifest as denial, deflection, or continuing to engage in harmful behaviors while hoping for different results. Others may go the opposite direction. Becoming hypervigilant, obsessing over self-improvement, or fearing any misstep that might lead back to an old pattern. This can result in rigidity, avoidance of emotional risks, or perfectionism that stifles personal growth. Some may suppress this wound by staying in a cycle of overanalyzing rather than taking tangible steps towards change. Watch for patterns of either avoiding introspection or overcompensating with excessive control, both of which stem from the same need to trust oneself, embrace new choices, and consciously disrupt limiting cycles. All right. So, my beautiful friends, I'm going to leave it here because that was a lot. And I know these readings are not easy. They can be very triggering. I did not plan on getting that many cards, but that's what Spirit gave us. So, I will do another one of these definitely before my surgery. And if you're wondering when you booked a reading for, I've had a lot of people like, when did I book my reading for? When you emailed me, the first thing I sent you where it broke down all my readings, there will be either, I said 4 to 5 weeks, January to February, or March. That's how you know when you booked for, just to let you know. I sent it to everyone that messaged me. So, well, the emails that I got to, like I said, I could show you my iPad. I'm up to 4,300 unread emails. It might be like 4334, some magical number, but yeah. I love you, my friends, and I hope you have a wonderful day or night and enjoy whatever you're doing after this. Maybe even just take some time to self-reflect and journal while it's all fresh. Don't feel bad if you couldn't watch it all in one go and you had to take it in tiny little parts. I understand that too. But yeah, I'm sending you lots of love and light, and I'm proud of you for having the strength to really look at yourself, because that's difficult. And hopefully it brought you some insight to how the person you're connected to, why they sometimes behave the way they behave from a shadowy place. Anyway, I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.